and thanks for stopping by. This is the third video that I'm posting from a podcast that I did with Dan from Men Need to Be Heard. Again, very wonderful resource, very generous with his time, extremely intelligent. So in this segment, we discuss my book, Confessions, A Raw Chronicle of Fatherhood in the Age of Absence, and more particularly, the conversation revolves around the role and the letdown of the American Psychological Association and men's mental health. So if you're new here, my name is Todd. I'm a psychologist and I'm an author. I'm an advocate for men. I'm very glad that you're here. While you are, be sure to subscribe. This is a new channel, so every little bit helps. Thank you. Now, let's listen to Dan and I. For my dissertation, as I was doing the literature search and review and writing that portion of the dissertation, I published a literature review paper, and I'll send that to you as well. Mm-hmm. And what I found was, at the time, I think I did that in 2011. It was published in 2013. I went all the way back to 1900 in several different academic online databases, journals, whether it was ProQuest, PsycInfo. Something fell down out there. I don't know what that was. But I actually had a couple of undergrad lab assistants help me with it, and we scoured everything that we could get our hands on, including conference presentations, and found that up until then, for those 111 years, there was only, I believe, 11 studies published in which the outcome focused on divorced fathers' well-being. 11 studies.
In 100 plus years.
Yeah.
Wow.
There's universities out here doing that about women every month. Believe me. Well, I'm sure you do.
Every day there's a study out there. I mean,
every day.
Yeah.
Every day. So that was I was fortunate in that I got a lot of support from my advisor in grad school. For my thesis, for my master's portion, I did his research because that's what you're expected to do, right? Mm-hmm. But then when I got to the dissertation, the doctoral research, I said, I'm doing my stuff. But he knew my situation. You know, we were friends personally. You know, so I had his blessing, his support, his encouragement, and in fact, to do my dissertation. And again, I'll share it with you. But the outcome was divorced fathers' well-being. My committee was also supportive, but that's because I pretty much handpicked them. You know, most places you have the freedom to do that. I would say that. If there was any blowback or any perceptions, any talking going on behind my back, I was not made aware of it. Although I will say that there's a couple of times near the end of my educational process where I did get myself into trouble. I opened my mouth times when I should not have. And I'm sure my dissertation being on the topic did not help. I'll say that. Or maybe I just reaffirmed to them that you know, guys are toxic or something like that. So I wouldn't say it was hostile for me, but I would say it was not welcoming, my process.
And that's the key point that I want to make with it, Todd, is why? Why do they... Your situation is better than I've heard from most, to be honest with you, right? You know,
yeah.
And I don't want to get too sidetracked on it or go off in the weeds too much, but why does academia specifically, when they're training psychologists and psychotherapists and all this stuff, they have that mindset, that anti-male mindset. It's there. It percolates through everything. You know, when you realize, I think it's something like 90% of all graduates now are female. And it just, what it does is it creates a huge roadblock for men who need serious help and professional help. Why do you think they are that way? Because the standard answer you'll always hear is, well, feminism has just taken control. And yeah, I'll grant that, but what, you know, the perception I have, I'm old, okay, is that academia, like you were talking about going through the process and you were getting in trouble because of certain things, I would say that should be welcomed, right? What is the thought process behind academia on all that? What is your thoughts?
You know, I don't know what started it at all, and I don't have a lot of facts. In fact, you may know a little about the history than I do. I don't know when it started to be 90% women, and it is, especially in the clinical with the clinical degrees. But I will say we're at a point now that it's not helpful, it's not welcoming, you know, and it is, in fact, I would say hostile for most men to be in or to earn clinical degrees. I I wonder also if a lot of it has to do with funding, right? So some of these professors, especially if they're at larger prestigious universities, if they're getting funding for their research, there's no funding for helping men. In fact, I write it in I think the preface in the book.
Mm-hmm.
There's no money in helping men.
Yeah,
only in
you
shaming
did
them.
mention that. Yeah.
So there's no financial or no way to fund studies about men, because there's no organizations out there to help with that financial support. Couple that with 90% of them being women, they don't give a shit about guys. They care about doing whatever they can for the community, making things easier for women. It's just a whole, I would say, conglomerate. All of these just nasty things all coming together, and yeah, we are where we are. I don't know how we get out of it. I really don't.
Yeah, and that's the $1,000,000 question, right? Because on average, 100 guys a day are killing themselves. About 40% of those, as near as we can tell, because there's no solid research, but based on extrapolation and all that, about 40% of them are due to divorce or family court issues. And this is a huge problem, and you would think they would be throwing money at it or begging for it, yet you don't see it at all. And then, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, universities, speaking of begging, universities should be begging young men to go through, and they should be paying them to go through their programs.
Yes.
and to get degrees. They should be financing the future of men's mental health.
Well,
right? But they're going in the opposite direction.
Exactly. And, when I look at, you're a researcher, so you're on the research side, and so you can speak to that a little bit, speaks to the issues that you're talking about in the book, where these mental health issues, you survived, right? It was not easy. You had some advantages, I would argue, because you were going to classes, and some of it might have made sense to you that I wouldn't have had, right? But so many guys don't have anything, and they sit and struggle, and then, God, so many of them, unfortunately, choose the ultimate end, and there's no coming back from that. And it pisses me off to a certain extent, but it breaks my heart more than anything that academia just doesn't recognize it, both as far as psychology, both the clinical and the research side. It's sad we're here, and yet 100 men a day, that's 36,000 men a year. We shut down the whole country over COVID.
Right.
And I'm not getting into the politics on it, but more men have died in the last 20 years from mental health issues by a mile than COVID.
Right.
And it just speaks to, and that's why your book is so important, Todd, because indirectly you are giving therapy, right? I don't want to make it seem like you're acting as a therapist when you wrote it, but you are, in a manner of speaking.
Existentially, maybe?
Yeah, I really believe that, and that's where it can change lives.
Yeah, listen, getting back to, to the unfortunate, and ending their own lives, man. When I really, really think about it, it makes me angry when people say that's quitting, right? That's the coward's way out. Listen, man, having been there this close myself, I understand. And it diffuses the responsibility away from the people who put that man in that situation in the first place, right? There's no accountability for how society treated that man, for that outcome. And that's what makes me really, really angry. And I guess maybe that's just even more evidence that we just don't care. He took the easy way out. Now he doesn't have to worry about it. He just left a mess for the rest of his family.
Right.
But when things are so painful that that's your only way out, it makes me angry when people say that that's cowardice. It really does.
And that's what makes me angry, right? And heartbroken also, because so much of this could be fixed if we just cared.